So I first have a question for all of you that will then turn into a question for Stephanie.
Cool.
So how many of you, like Stephanie, would be a customer of the analytics people? Raise them high, raise them proudly if you're the one just using but not doing the analytics. And then how many of you are the doers, or at least the sellers of the analytics? Okay, I am actually surprised. And how many of you are neither, and you're in the wrong conference, and you thought this was someone's bar mitzvah, and you're like, what am I doing here?
Wedding crashers.
Actually, I expect to see a greater balance between the kind of the creators and the consumers of it. And so Stephanie, I have a few questions about that. So
Sure.
a natural question, again, many of you would be thinking about it, or those of you who are the analytics producers are kind of fighting with this, build versus buy. So tell us about that. How much of the analytics do you want to create in-house, manage in-house, versus have best of breed do it for you?
So this is a place where we've really changed our philosophy at Microsoft, and I think that my team was slightly instrumental there. In years past, we had Microsoft IT, which is a fabulous organization, but they would build everything for us. You kind of start with Microsoft products where you can, and then Microsoft IT builds you your solution. And what we've realized, and frankly the Microsoft IT department has embraced, is like there are great products out there. We should just start using them. And so we use a number of non-Microsoft products in our global demand center, and they're best of breed, and we've brought them on board, and now we've standardized as a company on them. I think you really have to do a mix.
Very interesting. And of course, that begs a question that I probably shouldn't ask. It's probably rude of me to do, but hey, not the first time. But I bet everyone's thinking, so you work at Microsoft, so beyond just the systems that you're building for your businesses, on a kind of a day-to-day basis, the kind of software on your computer and on your phone. Tell us about that. Are you like, hooked into Microsoft? Would it be like really bad if you were using stuff from other firms?
So again, this is where I think the culture of the company's changed a lot. We are a platform and services company. If we do not have services that work with what customers use, we're crazy. So you'll see now that we have a number of services that work across different devices. We're not the iPhone company and we're not the Android phone company, but we have lots and lots of capabilities that work with them. And if you look at our cloud offerings, it's amazing the different platforms. We offer Linux on Azure. We're building SQL on Linux. And so on a daily basis, in terms of what we use the right tools. And and in some cases, our own offerings are not as mature. And so we've got to use what's out there in the marketplace.
That's great. That's an honest and refreshing answer. It's interesting that I'm looking at the pigeonhole here, and I love these kinds of questions. It's kind of like the geeky, nerdy questions. And we'll get into that, yeah. But this is the consumer here, so let's not start asking about the technical things. We'll get into that. But I am curious, though. You mentioned, I do want to talk a little bit about the churn model. That seems to be the number one question here. But before we even talk about anything technical about it, I'm curious, how much do you know about what your business customers are doing with other Microsoft services? How well integrated is it beyond the things that are under your control?
Yeah, so this is a place where we are actually doing work as a company. So I've got a global demand center, and you've got other parts of the company that have kind of built theirs. So they see their customers and I see my customers. And by the middle, I should say the end of this calendar year, we're going to get to one view of the customers together. And already, we have the ability to share things back and forth, but it's a little bit more manual. So we're moving to one system that'll kick off probably in September, October timeframe, and be really, really hardened by the time we get to the end of the year.
You're going to really have that 360.
We are.
Or maybe I should say 365.
There you go. You should say 365.
Microsoft joke. So let me just push that a step further. Just again, out of curiosity. So once you get to that point, and in terms of the B2B activities that you can see all the different kinds of Microsoft services that they're using, will you ever be able to connect that with the B2C side? So you know this particular individual and the business they work for?
We have to, because developers are individuals. IT folks are individuals.
I like how you say they're individuals. You didn't say they're people, because we sometimes wonder about that. But
They are. They are people. They're individual people. Yes. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we do this, we'll do it at a company level, which includes, if you think about Office, for example, Office is both a consumer product and a business product. So already within Office, they see people as both things. You know, consumers and consumers who sit inside enterprises.
Right. So you would know. I mean, just to stay with Mark Lohr, another loyal Wharton alum. So you'd know not only what Jet is doing, but you'd even have some sense of Mark Lohr and his
what the people in
activities.
Jet are doing.
That's really good.
It's really cool.
And so I imagine that, so right now you're building, let's just say, the churn models just on kind of your own global demand platform.
Yes.
So you're going to start bringing in, again, these other commercial touches, and then the individual level. How do you, not you personally, but the folks who are doing this, how do you deal with all that?
You mean the complexity of the
Exactly,
pieces?
right.
Well, I mean, I think what we do in general is we try to follow consistent approaches, I should say. And if you build a model and then use it consistently, you have less complexity when you bring different business pieces together. Office has a great churn model. Microsoft Azure has a great one. And as we bring things more together, we'll look at what are we doing consistently, and where though do you need something a little unique because the business is different.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. A lot of questions bubbling up about the whole fan thing. I think it was very interesting what you had to say about that. People want specifics. So what metrics? Get specific about identifying and quantifying the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I rattled off a few things, but essentially we can look at, we basically have a model that says those three dimensions that I laid out, how do you put them together from the data that we have, what percentage of a population feels right if it's a fan. Like you get that percentage too high and you ask yourself, really, do we have 60% of our users fans? I don't think so. And then we basically break it down and go, when you lose one of those elements, what happens to the behavior? When you lose the other element, when you have two different versions of the two, and then when you get down to one element, what happens to the behavior? And we've broken it all down. And now, the thing, though, that's interesting, and Eric and I were talking about this last night, is how do we make better use of that? I know how to work to build them through the Global Demand Center in just a good service, good experience way, but how do I start to identify them when they come onto my property proactively and then give them a different experience? And that's something that we're really just getting into. I'd say that the Windows business is actually further along on that than the cloud business. So, but it's super exciting. I mean, if I knew you were a fan, if I knew, you could come in and I could just give you a special offer because I want you to, keep being a fan.
Give it to me. Bring it on.
Yeah, there you go.
And what about tying in? That's great. And I like how you then took that question a step further. Let's go one step further than that. So how about tying in? So you measure the fans. You think about what you're going to do with that. How do you tie it in with other performance metrics? Like fanness and say customer lifetime value and so on.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, we know customer lifetime value of fans is greater, right?
Yep.
So I think that you really just once you can. So I know from large survey data and large populations who they are and what they look like, and then it becomes the taking that and bringing that definition in to all of the other places. So I'm able to say, lifetime value, able to calculate it, but it would be nice if I could get ROI of marketing activities with fans versus non-fans. And so I think there's just some instrumentation that's going to be needed to bring that definition into each place that we're measuring. It is totally not insurmountable. I can squint and I can see it, but we still have work to do.
And when you say we, I mean, are you referring to Microsoft? You're referring just to your piece of the organization? How much coordination are you doing with when it comes to analytics with your counterparts in other parts of the organization?
So we run a process. Our chief marketing officer is crazy about fans, and he runs a process with his whole marketing leadership team where we look at this left to right and we learn from one another, and we, again, to what we talked about before, we standardize our approach so that we're using the same logic. Now, a fan in Azure is going to be different than a fan in Windows, but we use the same kind of modeling. So we do that on fans. We actually do that. We've brought this global demand center concept into that same model. So the way we work at Microsoft is when something gets going to a certain point progress, we bring it in and we start to look at applying it across the board, across the businesses.
And tell me about, well, just using fans as an example, but with other forward-looking performance metrics that you have. I want to know where they operate with at different levels within the organization. So you have like cool metrics coming out of, say, the CRM system.
Yep.
What is it that the salespeople are looking at? What is it that you're looking at? So just, how are the analytics kind of working their way up the food chain?
So I have a global demand center dashboard that we've built, and the office team, different team than mine, they were working on one too. So we've leveraged that Microsoft IT organization, and we've gone to one dashboard. So if you are a marketer in France, you can actually pull up your dashboard and you can see for your geography, what's the flow, how much traffic are you getting, how much engagement are you getting, what is your most engaging content, what is your least engaging content, what's flowing from that into being known leads, how much is going into tele, how much of that tele is actually being qualified by tele, how much of that is moving into sales. So you can see the whole funnel, you can see your opportunity, you have X million dollars of opportunity coming out of this. And that enables you as a local marketer to go and push on all of the places you need to push. So everybody's, we said when we build our dashboard for this, we want everybody to use the same dashboard. At corporate, we're not going to have a special dashboard that's, I'll look at the world, but I should be able to, France should be able to see essentially what I can see. So that's the way we've done it.
So that's great. But that's kind of the horizontal answer to my question. Tell me about the vertical one. So tell me kind of what, say frontline people, salespeople versus executives.
Yeah.
So you're all using the same system. I get that. That's great.
Yep. So
tell me more specifically what kinds of metrics you're looking at that they're not, or vice versa.
Metrics, and I think maybe perhaps where metrics land for them. I think both are kind of interesting. So I'm going to look at a global level, and I'm going to occasionally dial in to geographies, and I'm going to look at some of the things I rattled off. I am going to be looking at my pipeline and whether my pipeline is getting clogged. I'm going to be looking at the efficiency of my marketing. What's my ROI per marketing tactic area, and ultimately I'm going to look at, am I delivering the worldwide Azure direct revenue that I need to deliver? So I'll kind of look at Uber metrics, and when I see a problem, I'll start to drill into different geographies and or areas, and then for sellers, they're going to look at they're going to be, depending on who they are. If I look at the telesales, they're going to look at how much did they move? What was their rate of handling the marketing automated qualified leads that were sent to them, and of those, how much revenue did they drive? And so that's what their management's going to be looking at. So
is there ever tension about that? Is there ever cases where they're looking at metrics and you're saying that's irrelevant, or vice versa, and where there's this disagreement about which are the right metrics to evaluate different parts of the organization?
I'd say there's an interesting tension, which is if I'm sitting over in a subsidiary and I am depending on this machinery to deliver me direct revenue, and I have only a certain amount of control over it, I should say revenue and perhaps leads, because some revenue is delivered indirectly. What are you giving me, Corp? And so it's been a really interesting handshake between corporate and all of our sales organizations to say, here's what we're going to give you, here's how we're going to do it, here's what you can hold us accountable to. And sometimes it's the other way around, right? Corp is saying, hey, sellers, what are you giving me? So it's kind of flipped that upside down, and that's been pretty interesting and pretty healthy for the business. So there's certain direct, traditional sales that are done squarely in the field, and we'll hand them leads and we'll help them. There's some sales now that are done really at a corporate level, but land in geography. So it's been quite interesting, and there has been some tension, but all in all, I think people look at it and go, wow, this is a great way to grow our business.
So I now want to ask the same line of questions, but instead of the metrics, and by the way, if you're curious, if you want me to ask Stephanie about specific kinds of metrics, bring them on. The polls are still open.
Yeah.
So
find me after.
So let's talk about techniques.
Yeah.
So tons of questions here about machine learning and R language and
Yes.
SQL and so on.
Yes.
So I want to ask and lots of different questions. First of all, You as an executive, okay, so you're, even though you have a technical background and, you could, at least you handled a lot of that stuff day to day at some point. You don't anymore.
Right.
But how much understanding do you have to have? Do you have to understand the difference between, R and Python and SQL and Tableau? I mean, how important is all that to you?
I have to know enough to know what I need people to do. And to be able to appropriately inspect and ensure that the right things are happening. And I also just need to know our whole business. So I need to know Tableau because they compete with Power BI. I need to understand how they do things. I need to know a lot, but I need to also hire the right people around me. So what we've done is I've got a lot of people in my organization who are squarely marketers, who are increasingly using analytics. So my web team, they're very familiar with their web analytics. My digital, team, super familiar. Social team, they get all their social analytics. But I also have hired a small team of analytics with one data scientist in it because I just think it makes sense. Now, I've got a whole company to draw on. I've got a data science team in engineering. I've got a central research team. So really it's about having a team that's small but can really get focused on what we need to do and can draw and basically leverage all those other resources. So I have to hire the right people.
Okay, well, thinking about that, we got all kinds of
Yeah.
MBAs and undergrads from
Yes.
Wharton and from other schools here.
Awesome.
So, and they're going to be just flooding you with,
I'm
business
collecting
cards and resumes. And,
That's right.
so what advice do you have for them?
Oh, I think this is the place to be. I cannot find enough people, even for my small team, and I know as a company, Microsoft cannot find enough talent in this area. So I think my first piece is you're in the right place. I think from the advice standpoint, get to know the business side of things. Be able to kind of straddle that line a little bit and bring all of your great data and customer analytics out and make it super useful to the business. I think some of the most helpful folks sitting in analytics organizations are ones who take enough time, and it's not endless time, take enough time to understand the business context that they're operating within.
So, push on that. So,
Yeah.
do you want business students who major in analytics or analytics people who do their homework about business?
I want both.
Okay.
Good
answer.
Yeah, totally. I love you folks have started doing your special classes in R and everything else for your standard MBA.
It's unbelievable.
That is awesome.
Right.
I am
Yeah,
so glad you're doing that.
For those of you who aren't aware of it, and from the older time alums, it used to be a couple of students would say, oh, listen, by the way, don't tell any of my classmates, but I'm learning R, okay? So it's between us, right? Awesome. And now they're coming to us and demanding it. And we're offering all these, on a Saturday afternoon, we'll have 100 MBAs sitting there, laptops open, ready to go. Right? We got Brandon and Ellie and other folks teaching. It's really, really terrific. So these are really good times, as Stephanie said. And they're only getting better. And it is folks like Stephanie Ferguson who make all that possible. And Stephanie, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to up here and to be with us all day and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks, Pete, for having me.
Okay.
Yeah.